I never thought I'd be spending the opening day of deer season with Helga. Usually this was a ritual for Megan, my wife, and me. A weekend getaway filled with hunting, quiet conversations by the fire, and the simple joy of being together in the woods. But this year, things were different. Megan, ever the perfectionist, was excitedly talking over dinner about a major teachers' conference in Springfield. She seemed thrilled to have been chosen to represent her district. Then, almost casually, she dropped the bombshell. "Oh, by the way, I won't be going hunting this year, but you won't be alone. I've asked Helga to go with you." I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. "Helga?" I asked, setting down my fork. "Helga, the one going through the divorce?" Megan nodded, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "That's the one. She's had a tough time lately, and she mentioned she's always wanted to try hunting. Her ex never let her—" Megan paused, her gaze shifting as if she were choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say, this will be good for both of you." I wanted to protest. It sounded absurd. Why should I, a grown man, babysit my wife's friend who had zero hunting experience? But I couldn't find the right argument. And Megan has this way of making sure her plans stick. So here I was, pulling up to Helga's house on a chilly Friday evening. She burst out onto the porch as soon as she heard my truck carrying what looked like her entire closet. A backpack, a sleeping bag, and a pair of hiking boots. I rolled down the window and called out, "Hop in, I'll help you with the gear." Helga smiled, and for the first time, she looked different. Not tired and withdrawn like I'd seen her at school events. "Hi," she said, tossing another bag into the truck bed. "I think I brought everything I need." As we loaded her stuff, I noticed something had shifted about her. The Helga I remembered was quiet, almost reserved. Now she seemed alive, buzzing with energy, and she talked nonstop as I drove us toward the cabin. "You really think I'll be any good at this?" she asked at one point, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I know it's weird that I agreed to this. I figured it's better than staying home." I shrugged. "As long as you're willing to try, you'll be fine." By the time we reached the cabin, it was pitch dark. I got straight to work setting up, firing up the generator, checking the wood stove. Helga climbed up to the loft where she'd be sleeping and began unpacking her gear. Sitting by the fire later, staring at the flames, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, this trip wouldn't be so bad after all. Helga's place was a small but tidy house, set back on a quiet suburban street. I'd been there once or twice, back when she and her husband were still together, for one of those neighborhood potluck events Megan liked to drag me to. This time, as I pulled into her driveway, it felt different. I gave a quick honk of the horn as Megan had suggested, something I wouldn't normally do but figured was polite enough. The front door swung open, and there she was, juggling an absurd number of bags and a thermos tucked under her arm. She was wearing a fleece-lined jacket, jeans and hiking boots, with her blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail. There was something different about her demeanor, less guarded than I remembered, almost eager. "Hey!" she called, half smiling as she adjusted her grip on the bags. I got out of the truck to help her. "Need a hand?" "God, yes," she said, laughing as she handed over a duffel bag. "I might have overpacked a little." "A little?" I teased, loading the bag into the truck bed. As we packed up her things, she kept up a steady stream of chatter about how she'd been looking forward to this trip, how it had been years since she'd been out in the woods, how she wasn't sure she'd survive without Wi-Fi. "You'll be fine," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. The drive to the cabin was about an hour, and Helga filled nearly every minute of it with conversation. She talked about her job at the library, her favorite hiking spots, even her disastrous attempts at online dating. I nodded along, occasionally throwing in a comment, but mostly I just listened. She was different from the Helga I thought I knew, the quiet, withdrawn woman Megan had described. This version of her was bubbly, animated, and unfiltered. At one point, she fell silent, staring out the window at the trees blurring past in the dark. "You know," she said quietly, "I almost didn't come." I glanced at her. "Why not?" "I didn't want to be a burden," she admitted, her voice soft. "I know this is kind of your thing. You and Megan." "It's fine," I said, more gruffly than I intended. "It'll be good for you. And honestly, it's nice to have someone along for a change." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. We reached the cabin just after 9. I parked the truck and we unloaded her gear in silence. The cabin wasn't much, a small A-frame we'd spent years fixing up. But it had everything we needed: a wood stove, a kitchenette, and a loft with enough space for a couple of sleeping bags. Helga climbed up to the loft to set up her things, while I started the fire and got the generator running. The temperature was dropping fast, and the crackle of the wood stove was a welcome sound. By the time everything was set up, it was almost 10 p.m. Helga came down from the loft, her face flushed from the cold, and plopped onto the couch with a sigh. "This place is cute," she said, glancing around. "Cute," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "I'll take that as a compliment." She laughed, tucking her legs beneath her. "You should. It's cozy." I turned on the satellite TV, flipping through channels until I landed on an old war movie. Helga stayed quiet for a while, watching the screen. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Thanks for letting me come." I glanced at her, surprised. "Megan's the one you should thank." "Yeah," she said, her gaze flicking back to the fire. "But you didn't have to say yes." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and went back to the movie. The cabin felt alive that night. The crackling of the wood stove filled the space with warmth, while the occasional creak of the beams or gust of wind against the windows reminded us we were deep in the woods. Helga had claimed the loft as her sleeping spot, a cozy nook we'd built with just enough room for a mattress and some storage. She was up there now, rustling around as she organized her things. Meanwhile, I was downstairs, settling into my usual routine. I double-checked the firewood stack, adjusted the vents on the stove, and ran the generator for a bit longer to make sure the batteries were fully charged. From the loft, Helga called down, "Is it okay if I use the shower?" "Sure," I replied. "The water heater's already on." The cabin's bathroom was simple but efficient, one of the projects I was proud of. It had 2 sliding doors, one connecting to the main room and another leading to the bedroom. Open doors let the heat from the stove circulate, but they could be closed for privacy. I settled onto the couch and flicked on the TV again. It didn't take long to find an old war movie. I let the familiar dialogue and explosions fill the room as I tried to unwind. A few minutes later, Helga descended the spiral staircase leading from the loft. My attention snapped to her before I even realized it. She was wearing a towel, just a towel. It was small, barely enough to cover her, and clung to her like it might fall at any moment. She had a bundle of shampoo, soap, and other toiletries in her arms, which she was trying to juggle without dropping. "Sorry," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze as she moved toward the bathroom. I nodded, quickly looking back at the TV, but the image of her was burned into my mind. The firelight had highlighted her bare shoulders and legs in a way that was impossible to ignore. As the bathroom door slid shut behind her, I let out a long breath, scolding myself. "Focus on the movie," I thought. "You're here to teach her how to hunt, not whatever this is." The sound of the shower starting filled the cabin, and I tried to tune it out. But then came her humming. Soft and melodic, it carried through the thin walls, blending with the sounds of the movie. My thoughts wandered, despite my best efforts to keep them in check. "She's Megan's friend," I reminded myself under my breath. "Megan's friend." After a while, the humming stopped, replaced by silence and the steady rush of water. It took longer than I expected for her to finish, and I found myself glancing at the bathroom door more than once, wondering what was taking so long. When she finally emerged, her hair was damp and her cheeks flushed. She was still in the towel, though this time she clutched it more securely. "Thanks," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the fire. "No problem," I replied, keeping my eyes firmly on the TV. Helga retreated to the loft and I stayed downstairs, pretending to watch the movie. But my mind was elsewhere, racing with thoughts I didn't want to admit to myself.